Hello and welcome to the Property Management Masterclass, a 6-part podcast series brought to you by Cottage Handbook and Your AirHost. My name's James Varley, the founder of Cottage Handbook, and our goal is to explain everything you need to know about effective short-term rental hosting and management. Over the course of this series, we'll cover all the basics and share actionable tips to help you build a sustainable business and deliver an outstanding guest experience. In this first episode, we'll dive into the fundamentals of STR hosting, including how to outfit your property, essential cleaning and maintenance practices, and the technology you need to get started. Now, before we jump into our conversation with Stefan from Your AirHost, I want to share some exciting news. On November the 8th, we are hosting a free educational event in London aimed at short-term rental hosts and property managers. The event will feature panel sessions, seminars, and exhibitors from the industry, and it will be a fantastic opportunity to learn, network, and grow your short-term rental business. Places are limited, so be sure to register today at holidaycottagehandbook.com/Your AirHost. And if you're interested in exhibiting at the event, please reach out to me directly over email, james@holidaycottagehandbook.com. Hope to see you there. Thank you for joining us for episode 1 of the Property Management Masterclass, brought to you by Cottage Handbook and Your AirHost. It's time now to introduce our special guest, the man who has been there and done it in the short-term rentals world. Stefan Hoffelner is the CEO and co-founder of Your AirHost, which is the leading STR management company in London. Good to see you, Stefan. How's it going?
Yeah, nice to see you, James. All well our side. We're in the middle of a very busy summer. It's obviously peak season, and we're all systems go over here at Your AirHost.
All right, fantastic. Right, let's get started then. You found your perfect property in the perfect location, but it's empty. You've got no tech, you've got no team, nothing. Where do you start?
Well, from the beginning, I think you need to furnish the property first of all. So you need to sort of get the right furniture, get the styling right, get the decor right. The property obviously has to appeal to whatever audience it is that you think that you're targeting. Defining that audience would be a useful first step as well for yourself. If you've got a holiday home in the countryside, you may be targeting and setting up the property differently to if you have a city centre apartment in the middle of London. So identifying that target audience of who you're trying to attract and what they're looking for would be a useful, very, very first step, and then furnishing the property accordingly to what you think that market will be looking for. When you are furnishing a property, it's really important to get good quality furniture from top to finish. I'll run through some of the most important pieces to add and what should be really sort of best in class as such, but it's something that I'll touch on a lot during all of this. Reviews are so important in this business. And if somebody has a bad night's sleep on a bad mattress, or there's an uncomfortable workspace that they're sat at, it's something that they'll likely review badly. So when you're setting out the apartment, you're purchasing furniture in the very beginning of your journey, try and sit in the furniture beforehand, try and lie on the bed beforehand, try and make sure that all of the furniture is suitable. It's not going to break. Don't go for the cheapest thing on Wayfair that looks great in a picture that you've never seen before and used. I recommend going to a store, sitting down on it, making sure that the furniture is fit for purpose as such and is going to last you as well. What you don't want to do is be replacing stuff that's flimsy, that you perhaps saved a few quid on the initial purchase of buying it, but then broke very quickly. What that will result in is it'll result in two things. Your guest leaving a bad review because a piece of furniture, broke or wasn't fit for purpose, and it'll result in you replacing it as well. So choosing the right furniture that's applicable is very important. And also making sure that the property is decorated, that it looks pleasant, that it looks homely, that there are touches in there that make the property feel welcoming and homely. the property must photograph well as well. Obviously, people are not coming around and having a look at your property beforehand, and they're not walking through it. What they're seeing is the pictures that you're displaying online. So making sure that there's colourful throws, bed throws, just to make it look enticing, welcoming. These things make a big difference. We see it all the time when you see a property, and when you go into it and you sort of, if you take a picture of the same room with 4 white walls and a bed, it doesn't look very appetizing. Nobody's going to want to book that online. But then when you dress the property, you put some colourful throws, you put some pictures on the wall, and you dress it appropriately and retake those pictures again, you can see a surge in bookings. So furnishing the property fit for purpose would be a good first step. I would also recommend as well getting the guest journey, how the guest sort of has his journey into your property right from the beginning. So communicated to him well as well in a house manual. How does he pick up the keys? Thinking about this whole process of what the guest journey is before they access your property is a really important step. Is it a pleasant journey for them? Is it easy for them to pick up the keys? In London and city centres, it's not always possible to put lockboxes outside your property, so you have to look at other solutions, whether that be somebody meeting the guests themselves, or key nest as an example of a solution where keys are held in local convenience stores. If these key nests are sort of 10 minutes walk away, is this a convenient journey for your guest? Is this something that's likely to be bad reviewed? So really thinking of what is the guest journey in my property, and then making sure that you try everything, that you actually use the property before you go into it. So, we had in the 5-6 years of us running this business and the thousands of properties that we've managed, we've had all sorts of stories of people saying that a property's ready. Yeah, Stefan, we're ready to go. Please manage our property. And the first guest that comes into the property, for example, the bath isn't connected underneath, so all the water drains out and stuff like this. So actually going in, using your own bathtub, using your own shower, using your own oven, just making sure that it all works. And then you've also communicated to your guest how to use that. If people have lived in a property for a number of years, they may well think that it's easy to open a blind because they know the magic touch. You need to shake it once to the right and it sort of opens a bit easier, or whatever it might be. Making sure that you communicate all of that information to your guests very clearly and precisely. We find at Your AirHost that video instructions are really useful for all sort of parts of the guest journey, where they're picking up the keys, how the keys go in the door, what keys are going in the door. All of these sort of pieces of information that you need to communicate to your guests, that you've clearly thought about that guest journey, clearly communicated it to them, and that the guest has a pleasant experience from start to finish, really. So thinking about all of those things from the beginning would be very useful and definitely beneficial to you in terms of a short-term rental. And then you can begin the sort of journey of listing it across all the platforms, which we'll touch on, of course. Getting yourself as much exposure, thinking about how you're going to answer messages. If you want to do it all yourself, how you're going to answer messages out of hours. That's an important one. The platforms will mark you down if you're not responding to messages in a timely manner. So just making sure that you've thought about all of those processes before you get the ball rolling. There are many, many more. One of the most important things as well that I'd like to kind of leave this on a snippet of is Wi-Fi. It's one of the key areas that'll get bad reviews. And when you're thinking about putting Wi-Fi in, just always go for the best in class that you possibly can. Imagine if you have a house that sleeps 4, you need to make sure that in all the bedrooms, in all the areas of the house, that the Wi-Fi is strong and stable connection, because it will be reviewed badly and will affect the listing. And for the sake of, an extra 10, 20, 30 pounds, whatever it is a month, to invest in that Wi-Fi, it's incredibly important. You have to imagine that there are 4 devices on. Perhaps you've got 2 bedrooms, you've got 2 children staying in there, and mum and dad want to work in the living room, and the children wish to stream videos while they're relaxing in their room at evening. make sure you test that beforehand and make sure it's fit for purpose, because if it's not, your guests will let you know, and they'll let your audience know as well. So those are the kind of basics of where I would start from, what I would be thinking, and how I would set up the property. So, making sure that the furnishing is right, making sure that all the appliances are right, making sure that's communicated to guests in a transparent, easy way that they can access, and clear way. All of your guests may not be from the UK. English may not be their first language. It may not even be a language that they speak. So consider that. And the best way to communicate that is visually. So think about all of those things beforehand, and just make sure that you've tried everything and that you're confident that it works. Because as I said, if you're not confident on it and it doesn't work, your guests will let you know, and they'll also let your audience know. Last bit as well, before we leave that, don't think that you can set up a short-term rental and build it for success. It must be ready to go from the first day. You welcome your first guest. That guest review is the most important review that you will ever receive. If you have the first 3 stays in your property and they're all negatively reviewed because you thought, once I've seen that this works, I'll invest some more money and time into it, that's the wrong approach, because it won't work if that's the way that you start. You must make sure that everything is in a row, everything is ready to go, and I like to say best in class from the beginning, because that's how you get those first good reviews, those first good traction on the property, and how ultimately you'll build it for success, rather than saying, once I see that this works, I shall invest some more time and money into it. That approach often doesn't work. So those would be the main points to consider.
Which items of furniture is it imperative that you get right from a high quality point of view? And what amenities are going to help your property stand out?
Bed, Wi-Fi and sofa are really important. The work from home space since COVID has become more and more important. So if you are offering that, do ensure that there's a comfy work chair, and as well, as we touched on, internet being strong, stable, and reliable. The night's sleep is so important. That's one of the highest categories of a bad review as well. So just ensure that you've slept in the bed, that you're confident. You're never going to get it exactly right with everybody's preference. Some people prefer a harder bed, some people prefer a softer bed. So you're not going to get everybody's preference on that right, but make sure the bed is not, the cheapest thing that you found online and you've ordered, and you can rest assured that that's not going to work. So just making sure that it's a comfy bed that's decent, the Wi-Fi connection works, and the sofa is something comfortable to sit on. That's a lot of the main points there. And then also that your house is well kitted with kitchen appliances. If somebody books your apartment, your house for a couple of months, they'll be expecting to use the kitchen as they would at home. So make sure it's kitted out to do so. If you're taking longer reservations in your property, always put yourself in the guest's shoes. If I was turning up to stay in a place for 6 weeks, 2 months, whatever the case may be, is there enough stuff here for me? Also as well, people, sometimes when they're renting out their properties for periods of time that they're not there, they'll leave a lot of their stuff inside. Just making sure that all of the stuff that your guest, that you would be expecting, is in there, and that there's not sort of too much otherwise cluttering up in there. So those would be the most important things that I would recommend.
Yeah, whenever I've stayed at one of my properties, I usually find that I buy something extra for the kitchen that I thought was there that was in fact missing, maybe a grater or an extra pan or something. In terms of health and safety, what are the vital things that people need to consider?
Yeah, it's one of the sort of most important parts to get right of it. You're hosting people in, you're responsible for their safety. So making sure that the fire alarms work, carbon monoxide, that you've got a clear sort of fire plan if something went wrong, that's communicated. Where do guests get out? How do guests get out the property? If it's on the 15th floor, guests need to know where the fire escapes are, and not to use the elevator, sort of basic stuff like that, but must be communicated clearly to the guests. fire safety certificates, and also making sure that the electrical certificates are done is, now a must in the short-term rental space.
In terms of ideal amenities, I've got a few here which have been mentioned regularly across our channels. Being pet friendly, having a hot tub, having an EV charger. How are things like this going to help you appeal to more people? And I guess it depends on who your target audience is, of course.
Very much so, very, very much so. And where your property is located. If you're in a city centre block, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a hot tub in there. I read some statistic, don't quote, I'm not exactly sure on the numbers, but I think less than 5% of listings on Airbnb have hot tubs. So it really does stand you out against the crowd if you're able to put one in. It's not something that's so common within London or city centres, but, perhaps for sort of countryside properties and places with some more space, but that will definitely stand you out from the crowd. And I think it's quite a requested sort of amenity. Obviously, all of the sites have the amenities where you can click. So if your listing doesn't have them, you simply won't show. So important to look at them, and going back to that first step of identifying your target audience, what are they looking for? And then putting in place all of the amenities that you think that target audience will be looking for, would be would obviously be a useful step for anybody considering getting into the short-term rental space.
Next thing then, tech. Now, there's a lot of tech solutions out there now in the short-term rentals space. We've got property management solutions, direct booking websites, dynamic pricing tools, digital guidebooks, noise monitoring, all this kind of stuff. What do you need? What are the essential things you need to get started?
To get started, the sort of most important thing would be, in my opinion, to get yourself a decent property management software, something that will collect all of your bookings into one place, into one calendar where you can see it clearly, where you can answer messages to all of your potential guests in one place. It'll make it so much easier for you. Let's say if we set up a property tomorrow, we want to list it across Booking.com, Airbnb, Expedia. We want to get on all the major platforms. What we don't want to be doing is spending time logging into these individual platforms and messaging our guests on them. Like I said before, quick response times is really, really important. So if you can get that all pulled into one place, of course, it's going to help. And as well with the calendar, what we don't want to be doing is cancelling bookings because we've got double bookings. A booking came in from Expedia and that didn't sync with Airbnb. And now I've got 2 reservations for the same time period in there. Well, I'm going to have to cancel one of those guests, and that's going to knock me down from the platforms. So having speedy response times and a clear calendar where all the bookings can go in is going to be really useful. So that's kind of where I'd start. I'd also look at the digital guidebooks, just making sure again that we're communicating all of the information about our property in really clear, concise, and easy to understand, digestible, bite-sized chunks. Those can break that down really easy for you. And then, one of the most useful tools that we find as a business is decent insurance and risk management. So making sure you can get the platforms out there. We use a brilliant one, which is called Superhog, which does some really great guest vetting for us. So what it will do is it'll check. It has a 5-step verification of all the guests, checking their passport. They'll need to scan their face so we know it's that person on the passport that's making the reservation that's making the reservation in our property. And that will stop any, potential parties or fraudulent bookings made with fraudulent bank cards, all of the nasty side of the short-term rental industry that used to be more prevalent is easily cut out with some simple tools. And Superhog will do that for you. It's a valuable partner of Your AirHost that we work alongside. But whatever one that you choose to do, just make sure, it can do it with the click of a button, and that the guests are properly vetted. And then that would also give you peace of mind that the right guests are coming into your property and it's not attracting the wrong kind of crowds. Anybody that's looking to make a fraudulent booking or looking to host a party just simply won't go down that avenue. It'll be much easier for them to book the property next door that doesn't have those tools in there. So those would be, the pieces of tech that I would say would be the most useful. That property management system where you can correlate, sort of collect everything to do with your property in one place and keep it nice and easy for you to manage. And the digital guidebooks as well, just making sure that your guest has a nice journey, that they have all the information clearly communicated to them, and the right insurance or risk management products along would be a great first step, and will take you, a lot of the way to having a successful short-term rental.
Fantastic advice. Another very important thing to consider is cleaning and maintenance. So, what are the foundations you need to put in place to ensure your cleaning and maintenance is always up to scratch?
Check, 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 and check again. There is no substitute for going into a property and checking it. We ask for pictures from all of our cleaners when they come in. So they take 4 to 6 pictures of how the guest left the property, and they need to take 4 to 6 pictures of each room when they leave the property. We'll then do audits as well of the cleaners. And that's really as much detail as picking up the plug from the plug hole and making sure that there's no hair underneath it, and having photographic evidence of that, and check behind them. What you want to do, is you, as I said in the beginning, is you want to be in your property, using your property, and making sure that the appliances are fit for purpose. And you also want to be behind the cleaner. There's no substitute for checking it. The cleaners, notoriously, they'll be very busy, they'll be high in demand, and they'll be cleaning another property after yours, and they'll want to go and get to that next property. So let's say that the linen that they have has a slight stain on it. They'll be hiding that sometimes under the fold. Go in there and double check behind them. It's the most useful thing you can do. And unfortunately, there's no substitute for doing it. And so for my first short-term rental that I ever set up, I was going in and checking after every single clean. I was welcoming the guest there myself, and, checking also as well, not just, the linen and the clean, but opening the cupboard drawers, checking the pots and pans. If a guest has used pots and pans during his stay or her stay and has not cleaned them properly and just put them back in the cupboard, that's a real easy one to slip under the radar. So actually looking at all the pots and pans, make sure they're all aligned. I open the sugar, make sure that it's not stayed there too long and it's hard. Make sure all of those little details are looked after, that the teas are all nicely presented, the coffee is nicely presented, there's a coffee pod in the coffee machine. All of those little touches which your cleaner perhaps isn't going to look after as well as yours. But I can tell you as well, they will do once you point it out to them 3 or 4 times and let them know that that's what you're looking for. They'll also know then that you're going to be going behind and checking on them. So they know that, hey, I'm going to be checked on this anyway, so it's easier if I just do it first of all. So the more you're checking and the more you're behind that, the better the standard of cleaning will be. So it's something that ourselves as a business do really regularly in every single property that we manage, and it's something that I think is vital for all short-term rental managers to do, is those self-checks on the property. And going down into as much detail as lifting the plug hole up is unfortunately necessary. What you don't want is a bad review, and you don't want a bad review for something silly like there was pans left in the cupboard that weren't clean, the cutlery wasn't cleaned and polished correctly. Those sort of things that again are really easy, and if you're going and checking, you can make sure happen. There's no substitute for that.
Yeah, the attention to detail is really vital, because your guests will pick up on it. In terms of the cleaning, then, how important is it to train your cleaners right at the start of the journey and set the expectations in terms of what you want?
Yeah, it's vital, and don't be shy to change them, because it's such a vital part of your business. If the standard isn't where you want it to be, make sure that you have a backup. I can also guarantee you on Christmas Eve, when you've got a really important booking come in, that one of the cleaners is going to call sick at a certain point in time. So having that ability, unless you want to be putting your marigolds on and cleaning up behind your guests, which I really recommend against if it's your own property, because you become so emotionally attached to it. It's really important to have a cleaner to take that first step of cleaning up after the guests and in you coming in afterwards, so that emotional attachment isn't there. That's really important. But don't be shy to have 2 or 3 cleaners on your list that you can go through. And if the standards aren't there from the one you'll feel confident to change it, because you know you've got a little list there that you can go through. And also, if you are let down last minute, you'll have some additional people to call on. So yeah, it's a really important part of this business, making sure that the property is well presented and the guest feels that the property is clean. Particularly since COVID, it's become even more important than it already was beforehand. So yeah, make sure that you're checking your cleans. It's vital.
Yeah, your cleaner is your VIP really in this business. You've got to get it right. They are your first line of defense. Final thing for this episode, Stefan, insurance. You mentioned Superhog before. Talk to us about the importance of having the right insurance for your short-term rental.
Yeah, I mean, if something does accidentally go wrong, at Your AirHost, we don't see too much malicious damage. It's not really something that exists in the space, because we've done the correct work beforehand in employing the correct risk management partner for us as a business. So if you do go through those steps, the sort of guests that you attract won't be maliciously damaging your property, having parties. They won't come in, because you've done the correct work in employing the correct risk management partner. But what you will see from time to time, as with any rental that you do on your property, whether it's a long term, whether it's a short term, is accidental damage. That's unavoidable, and you want to make sure that you're correctly protected from it. So Airbnb have air cover, which is great, but you have to engage with Airbnb support, and it can sometimes not go your way that you want. So having that additional step of insurance in there, if you've got anything nice in the property, or anything that's costs a few more than a few pounds that you don't want to lose, making sure that you've got your receipt for it, and that you can claim from a proper risk management partner who's going to pay out in the event that the guest caused this damage, that you can prove that. And you have to have your ducks in a row with it. Make sure you have a picture beforehand. If you've got an expensive couch in your property that looks great, it really fits in with there, but it's quite high value, make sure you take a picture of it before each stay, and take a picture of it as soon as you come into the property as well, and use some sort of timestamp to back that up. Because if the guest has damaged it and you have a correct risk management partner in place and you have a receipt, that will be covered for you. So it's worth its weight in gold. The second something goes wrong, you'll always say, God, I should have got that risk management partner in place beforehand. So make sure you do, because something will accidentally happen at a point in time. And if you're correctly covered with the right partner, you'll be protected.
All right, that's just about it for episode 1 of the Property Management Masterclass. In episode 2, we outline how to create the perfect listing, discuss online travel agencies, plus channel management, and much more. Catch the episode on our website, YouTube channel, or podcast platform. And if you'd like to meet us both in person, make sure you join us for our free educational event for short-term rental hosts and property managers in London on November the 8th. Places are limited. Head to holidaycottagehandbook.com/Your AirHost to register. For more free education, tips and trends from the STR industry, head to holidaycottagehandbook.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcast series, and download a free ebook for hosts and property managers. And if you have rentals in London which require expert management, make sure you get in touch with Stefan and his team. Head to yourairhost.co.uk for further details, or call 0203 280 2975 or email hello@yourairhost.co.uk. That's it for episode 1. We'll see you soon.